Morning, family. I love coming. I'm going to move this a bit closer because every time I come, people move further and further away. I'm not sure, is it me? Just want to make sure the cable's fine. I just feel more comfortable when I'm with you guys, as close as I can get. So good morning, family, again. Good morning. Just a quick update. ADRA. I'm involved with ADRA. It's not my job. It's something I do as part of my ministry. We all have our little ministries to do, and this is something that I love to do. Now, I know there's a lot of ADRA people here, and that's just fantastic. But I visit a lot of churches. I speak there, I connect with them, we do some training. I visited a church in Tasmania late last year with a couple of ADRA folk from the head office in Sydney. The church was about the size of this. That's the building. It's that big. Tiny little church. Most folk were elderly. I'd say average 60, 70, 75. Probably about 60% were in that age group. And they felt they needed to reinvent themselves as a church because they were losing members, as you do. Because when you're a tiny little church like that, who wants to come to a tiny little church, right? So what they did, they decided to start working within the community. And they're in an area where there's a lot of natural disaster, fires and floods and all that sort of thing. So they teamed up with the council. They said, hey, council, can we support you guys in any way? And the council said, absolutely. We have so many things that happen in the community. We'd love you on board. So ADRA went down, and I came as a part of the team to help them out, trained 80% of the church. So 80% of the church turned up, which is fantastic. And now they have a trailer. It's filled with chainsaws and cleaning supplies and all sorts of tools and generators and all sorts of things. And what they're doing now is connecting with the community at large. Anytime there's a problem, anytime there's an issue, they're out there. And guess what's happening? It's attracting people to the church. And the church is growing. But the people who are coming to the church don't know what they believe. They don't know about the Sabbath, they don't know about the second coming, they don't know about those things. They're learning that as they're coming to the church. And I spoke to some of these folk, and I said, why are you coming here? She goes, one of the ladies at least, she says, because this church shares my values. And one of the values is, I want to be useful. I want to help in the community. I want to do something for others. And I said, so what are you learning? Well, I'm learning about Jesus, and I'm learning about the gospel, and I'm learning about the Sabbath, and I'm learning about this. And so she's slowly becoming part of this community. There's about 2 or 3 people there who have had that journey already. Isn't that fantastic? What a different way of working the gospel. I'm going to share a little bit about that today as well. So today I want to share with you a little bit about, it's a bit of a kind of a report as to what's happening as I'm visiting different churches and what I'm seeing. And the main question I have is, how does a church like us, who is incredibly gifted, who has amazing truths, would you agree? We have incredible truths, yeah? We have an incredible history. We have those beautiful red books that I've got in my library by that lady. What was her name? I keep forgetting. Alan something, yeah. Those beautiful books, those books help me on my journey through life. We have great theologians. We have medical mission fields. We have hospitals, education system. Did you know we have the second largest private education system in the world? Guess who's number 1? The Catholics. We're number 2. I didn't know that. So we have, as a church, we are so gifted in so many ways. But guess where we fail? We fail connecting with people. We fail by connecting with people from our hearts. We're not good at that. We're good at this, and we're good at this, but we're not good at this. And this is something that leadership knows. This is something that we as a church struggle globally. And there are reasons for it, and it's complicated, but we as a church, and the theme I want to share with you today, we as a church need to do something about that. Because if we don't, I don't know how we're going to survive with all the changes that are coming. Yes?
Give Bible promises away.
Yes, absolutely. My wife, she always writes little notes and encouraging texts and things like that, and sometimes put Bible. I know Sue does that sometimes. I've seen you do that on our chats within the ADRA. Sometimes you give something positive. Absolutely. Let me ask you something. What have you seen that has changed drastically just in the last, say, 5, 6, 7 years? What are some of the things that are very different today that were...
COVID has changed our life big time. Yeah.
John, in which way?
Testing our faith, testing our endurance, just how to connect with people. Because COVID really pushed us apart in communication.
Absolutely. Yeah, COVID's really changed the dynamics, how we work, how we connect. Absolutely. Any other ways that you've seen how life has changed? No, Sue, I'm pointing to you.
The way we connect with people, it's much more electronic for so many people.
Yeah.
They feel like they've connected with someone if they text them, as opposed to picking up the phone and talking with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not really communication of the heart.
No, it's a different kind of communication. And we say hello to all the, what do you call them, the onliners?
Yeah.
And I've got used to being an onliner, especially during COVID. Do you know how good it was sometimes? I know you're talking about connection, but being in my pajamas and watching some sermon online or connecting to that church, because we couldn't mingle. It was gross. I was in my pajamas all of Sabbath. It was fantastic. But you're right, we missed that social connection, and it took a while to reconnect. And look how much time it's taken for us to reconnect. What other things has changed?
A lot angrier, a bit more quickly. They have their right, but don't recognise other people.
There's more tension. You find it on the roads. Yeah, my wife was telling me, I noticed it when you're driving, people are they're more aggressive, less patient. Yeah. What about politics? What have you seen in politics? Don't get me started. Yes.
All the bad things are escalating at an enormous pace.
Especially, sorry, I thought you finished. Worldwide, yes. And especially, I enjoy watching American politics. I have a bit of fun with that for whatever reason. And that is just on a whole new another level, what's happening there. It's fascinating that you can now be a politician and lie continually, and everybody knows you're lying, and yet it's still okay to stay in the office, and people just, and everyone just moves on. What about technologically? What changes have you seen technologically in the last few years?
Everyone watches TikTok and things like that. I went to a restaurant yesterday, interesting enough, and you sit at the table, you scan the barcode on your table, you have to order through the phone, there's no personal contact.
Yeah.
Whatsoever, you can't ask questions or anything like that. You have to pay electronically, so there's no...
And what if you want to take the bacon out, or how do you do that?
Personal contact is the thing. Personal contact
Yeah.
to absolutely nothing. You go into the shops, you do the work that the shop assistant used to do because they're not there. Everything is becoming, there's no personal contact. So how do you build relationships with people?
Yeah, true. And that seems to be a theme, personal contact. Is there any way for the onliners to do feedback as well? No. There's not. Okay. Oh, can I just say, that gentleman that's just walked in, this young man, I love your top. I absolutely love it. Sorry?
That's what I said.
Yes, I know. And I saw it and I thought, oh, finally I could wear that, but I can't. I'd get in trouble if I wore that at church, especially when I'm speaking. John, yes.
A plus and a minus for artificial intelligence.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Artificial intelligence.
Yes. Can I talk a little bit about that? AI? I'm in the industry where we use AI. This is going to be, in my opinion, a real challenge for the church. Yes. What do you see? What challenge do you see for the church?
For me,
Yeah.
I see it as truth, but with some error mixed in, and it will bleed, just like in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Every other time, there's a tremendous way of diverting people from the Word of God.
So can you imagine, maybe in the next 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, it won't be long, depends on how, because now the lawyers are getting all involved in the AI industry. One of the good things could be is that, let's say, an Adventist company or maybe even the conference says, look, we're going to create this AI because everyone's doing it. You'll have access to all of the publications throughout the history of the Adventist Church. Every Ellen White article, every book, every sermon ever preached plugged into AI. Every YouTube of everything that's has ever been said by an Adventist or written or a journal or a publication or a magazine or a book is now available to all of us. Can you imagine then, we go home on a Sabbath and we feel discouraged and we feel down and we say to the AI, look, I'd love a short sermon, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I'm feeling down. You know me, you know my online presence, you know what I think, you know what I say. Can you cater a sermon just for me? And the AI does. And it's catered for you within your Adventist framework. And you can say to it, and can you make it in the voice or in the language of Ellen White? I want to hear it as if she said it. And it does. And that's going to be available very, very soon. I'm not talking 10 years or 20 years. Sorry?
They were talking about it. A guy committed suicide because the chat box on the e-chat guided him suicide.
Yes.
It's already available in the US.
A lot of things like that are already available. But that could be for many a blessing. But, sorry?
Yes, it could be.
It could be a blessing. And there could be a very positive, just like the internet when it first was released, we were all scared of it. And there were so many problems with it. But look how many great things we have been able to do with the internet. Today, we are using the internet to connect with those that couldn't make it here.
I actually have Jesus this week, so I can assume that this AI intelligence is going to bring false Jesus.
And it could. And it could.
Jesus, I know, he said, I am a good man. And he was a beautiful, magical person.
Let me take it a bit further, this example of AI. So then you have our churches will have all our separate AIs. The Baptists will have theirs, the Catholics will have theirs, and they'll service their people, their members. But now imagine a company that says, you know, this is fantastic. Let's combine all the knowledge of all Christendom, all Islam, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs. Let's combine this together and create an AI guru. Something that speaks to everyone. Something that everyone will appreciate. And it picks the great things from Adventism and Baptists and Catholics and Buddhists. And I think that would be fantastic. Can you imagine how powerful that would be? Can you imagine the unity that it would create? I don't know. Maybe there's some problems with that too. I don't know.
Well, it will do that because if the Pope is supporting that, he's promoting that.
Yeah. And you know the danger with that, although it's powerful, the incredible power of AI is that it caters its message to you as an individual personally. So where I'm at, and my understanding, the algorithms will say, well, John knows about this, I can see he's preached, I can see he teaches and blah, blah. So I need to give him something that will guide him down this path. And the AI will do that. And for Sue, it'll do it differently. And for John, it'll do it differently. And for everyone, it'll do it differently. But who is guiding the system to where? That's the interesting part. And the other thing is we are all disconnected at the same time, but we're connected to this thing, but we're disconnected from each other. Let me take it one step further, is that now, with the next year or two, the AR, VR, it's the augmented reality and virtual reality glasses are going to become more and more ubiquitous. And those who can afford it, initially they'll be expensive, but the prices will come down. Now imagine you put these on and you can tell the AI, I'd love to hear a sermon from Ellen White somewhere in the old church, or maybe somewhere in Battle Creek or some other place. I want to feel like I'm there in the 1870s, in the 1880s. And you put this on, and it's not cartoonish. It feels real. It looks real. And you can then immerse yourself in that place. It's distorted reality, yeah. There's challenges with that. John?
For me personally, I react mentally and with my heart reaction against that sort of stuff. That artificial reality for me is plain simple, get a life for goodness sake, don't indulge in
I get that, John, but have you tried a AR or a VR headset? Let me tell you, once you've tried it, it's addictive. It's actually, you've tried it. Once you've tried it, it's amazing.
So just let me add to
Yes.
I was 16, I was a teenager, and I was down a little country library and I borrowed all sorts of books. I made a decision I've never regretted all my life. I don't read fiction flat out, no way.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted that. I don't want someone else's imagination interfering with mine. I read fact, and like I said to you before, one side of my garage is bookshelves,
Yeah.
books. Every one of them is fact, it's history, it's whatever it is, it's healthy. I
But-
don't indulge.
But that's you, John. And John, you are in the minority. Most people enjoy a little fiction. The two of you are in the minority. I'm with you too. I am the same. I find fiction a waste of time. But my wife and others, they actually get something out of it. The vast majority of people actually enjoy. And some fictitious stories are actually very powerful. Yes? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. There's, like the internet, many benefits to it. And this will bring also many, many benefits. But my point is, and this is where I'm heading, is that in this world of... Sorry?
Can we trust the people behind AI?
Can we trust... That's the big question. Can we trust that? I spoke to a researcher and, oh my goodness, we're going to go overtime. I spoke to a researcher, which uni are you in? Oh, okay. Swinburne. So I know the professor at RMIT who deals with AI, because I go to some of the conferences and we chat, and he was telling me some of the challenges with AI, and he says, yeah, at the moment the problem is those who control it, those who have written the code, they have a particular mindset, they have a particular political leaning, and so you're getting their reality of the world. And he said, and that's a problem. Now, he wasn't politically biased either way. I don't think he was a religious person. I think he was an atheist. But he says now they're building another AI to make sure that the first AI is doing its job properly. Because they can see that, you know, things are not balanced. Yes, Ronnie.
I'll ask a question. Are we building a relationship with God, or are we building a relationship with AI?
True, but I'd also like to say that we could probably use AI to build a relationship with God. Yeah, so just like on the internet.
There could be a lot of benefits, but you have to be so careful.
True. Yep, that's right. Yeah, that's true. So the point is, we are living in this incredibly fast changing world. Skepticism is high. Who believes politicians or anyone in authority anymore? Especially in the last 4 or 5 years, what we've seen. So the change is huge. And my point is, how does the church adjust to this massive amount of change that we're seeing? And those of us who are in the know and have our fingers in that pie, that technological and that the political and that the cultural pie, realize how quickly things are changing. How is the church going to survive this? how is the church going to adjust to these amount of changes? Where are we going to be in just 5 years?
One day.
Well, absolutely. I totally agree. Can anyone know, was it in the 1900s, do you know how many Christians or how many people identified as Christians in the 1900s? Anybody know? No, in Australia. I'll tell you, it was about 96%. So 96% of the Australian population identified themselves as Christians. About 1900s, 1904 I think it was the stats. Do you know how much it is now? Look, it was 50% just before COVID, around 50% before COVID. So I'm not sure what it is now, but you can see the trend of where things are going, not just technologically, not just culturally, but also as a community, as a Christian community. And this is not just Adventist or Baptist or Catholic, this is Christianity everywhere where this is happening. So, I've been in leadership. Sue, you remember I was a young Pathfinder director. I was 23, I think, 24. I was a young elder and I was involved in the church. I don't know why, but somehow the older folk in the church felt that I could do the job. I didn't think I could, but obviously they had confidence in me. I did the job. Doesn't mean I did it well, but I did the job. So I've been in church leadership for a while. What was it, 35 years or so. I've worked with over a dozen ministers. I've visited many churches, many different communities. I think I've shared this before, that I do connect with different Christian groups. I meet with the Baptist leaders, Lutherans, Wesleyans. I actually went to visit a Wesleyan church not that long ago. One of the pastors invited me there, so it was really interesting. And when you think Wesleyan, what kind of church service do you think of? You know, something from the 16th, 17th century? No, this was contemporary. They had drums, they had music. You know, the youth were there, they were singing. A Wesleyan church, who would have thought? You know, but I was surprised. It was really nice. It was a great service, actually. So I connect with a lot of people in leadership. And I always ask the question to myself over the last, say, at least the last 20 years, is why do churches succeed and why do churches fail? And what makes a church grow? What's the ingredients? What is it that makes a church grow? I'm going to share a couple of things that I learned from this experience. So I looked at the NCD data. Some of you know the NCD study, the Genesis study. I went to the Fuller Research Institute, connected with them. And then at church, in my own local church, I created what was called a church growth advisory. Mostly young people, some elders, some other folk with experience on there. And we studied this topic for about 4 years or so, maybe 4 or 5 years. And what I'm about to share with you is what we discovered. And it's not brain surgery. It's really simple. And some of you might be thinking, John, why are you even talking about this? We already know this stuff. Well, let's see. What we discovered is that the current church, as it is now, is calibrated or tuned for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Do you hear what I'm saying? We are tuned or calibrated, or however you want to describe that, for something that was in the past. And we need to recalibrate for a church, or for a community rather, that's moving very quickly. I think about, I love my sermons that I love preaching about the Old Testament. You know, and I think I've shared with you some stuff from Exodus and Genesis and Hosea. I just love those topics. I love that stuff. And what I've learnt, and you'll agree with me, is that God continues to adjust to the culture of the day. The way they worshipped during the time of Adam and Eve and then through Abraham was very different to the way they worshipped when they were in the wilderness at Sinai. True? It was a very different kind of worship. And then you move on, and then again, once they returned from Babylon, that worship was again fine-tuned and changed as that group that came back then had an international perspective. They weren't like focused on themselves. They learnt to be more international. Then when Jesus came along, again, that worship changed. And then when the disciples and the early church moved, they changed. The church changed. The way they worship changed. Who was involved in the church changed. The Gentiles were there. The women were involved in the church. And that continues to change throughout history. So change should be part of our DNA because it's part of God's DNA. But for some reason, we struggle with that change. So the two things that we learned. Number one, and because of time, I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. The first thing we learned is that a church, to be successful, needs to have its young people, its youth, involved in the leadership and in every part of the church. In the same way that my son is about to get his license and I've been training him for a few years, he's got his L plates, eventually he's going to get his P plates very soon, and I'm going to hand him the keys as a young man to the car, and he will be able to drive on his own. He'll still have his P's, but he will now be driving on his own. We need to learn to give our young people the keys to the church. Amen? Amen. Why? Why do you think that's important? Yeah? Future of the church? Positive, the future, yes, but why in particular the young? What did they have? Sorry?
The church will start growing.
The church will start growing, they'll attract other people, but what is the difference in their thinking to ours? And I put myself as the old generation, you know. Paruski. Technology, yes. Yeah. Have you ever spoken to someone who is 20 or 30 years younger than you? Can you relate? Yes, but can they relate to the world? Can the younger people relate to the culture of the world? Yes. So if we want to be as a church that relates to the culture of the world, then we need the young people in leadership.
It's like when we get young, inexperienced sports people go into a team and they don't know that what a big stage it is and that they can fail and they just go for it.
Yes.
The enthusiasm.
The enthusiasm.
And that's right, we can do this.
Exactly. I love that enthusiasm. Oh, I used to have that enthusiasm. Now I'm getting old. I get pains when I have enthusiasm. Can you think of a church or a community or a group that was started by young people and it was successful? Can you think of one? Sorry? The Adventist Church? Really? Yes. The Adventist Church was... And how old were these young people? In their 20s? Yes. Can you think of another church that was started by young people? Maybe Christianity. How old were the disciples when they started out? Yeah, when they followed Jesus, weren't they in their late teens, 19, 20, 21? Weren't they all around that age?
John must have been the youngest because he passed away at 90s.
Yeah, they were young men. And what about some of the prophets throughout history? Isaiah, Jeremiah. They were young. Why does God choose these young people who are inexperienced, who don't have any experience in life, who are naive in so many ways, who are going to make a ton of mistakes? In the same way I'm going to give my keys to my son, I know he's probably going to have an accident. Why does God do that? Why do we do that? Because... Yes, they can be molded, they can be trained, they can have a life experience. But most of all, is that these young people are connected to the culture in a way that we're not. And with this rapidly changing culture, we have to lean on our young people. We need to invite them in and say, here are the keys to the church. Can you help us navigate this minefield, this constant change cultural? John, give me a minute. This constant cultural minefield, can you help us navigate? We need to come to them. At the same time, we need to mentor them. We need to put our arm around them. We need to be there with them when they fail, when they fall over, when they make a mistake. It's okay, yes, I know, we all make mistakes. Don't worry, the church will forgive you, and the church will forgive them, right? Because we all make mistakes. John?
Okay, you mentioned culture, mindset.
Yes.
Now, as we go through life, the culture itself, you've got to question. Because the culture that seems to be leading to contrary to God.
Sure.
So how do you address a culture
Yeah.
that's moving away from God?
Yeah. Well, that's where we, as adults and those who have much more experience, mentor the young people through their passion, through their energy, and mentor them through that. In the same way the early church was going through this massive turmoil. I mean, can you imagine for 1,000 years or 2,000 years, the church was only within this wall, unless you're born of a Jew, your mother's a Jew, and you've got the blood, and you're in that line, you cannot be saved. All right? It's not biblically true, but that was the mindset. Now they've opening the doors, and the Gentiles are coming in, the Romans, all sorts of horrible people are coming into the church. Right? How does the church cope with these horrible people coming into the church? You know, it got so bad that eventually these horrible people outnumbered the Jews, and they had to rename themselves, and they had to call themselves Christians. So I don't know what our journey is, but eventually we're going to have to deal with maybe all these horrible people coming into the church, and maybe we're going to be challenged in a way that we can't imagine. I don't know. Bring it on. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. All right. I have to move quickly. So that was the first one. And the second thing that we learned, so it's only two. The second thing we learned is that a church that is growing and that is successful and that is moving through the community is a church that is working with the community. It is doing something in the community. Let me read you something. So there was the Director of Research and Special Projects for the SDA conference, Monty Sahlin, I assume he was Arabic. He said, so he spent about a decade asking these questions. Why do churches grow? He surveyed 647 Adventist churches in the US. It's a lot, 647 churches. And this is what he concluded. He said, there is no correlation between the number of Bible seminars and soul winning. So his statistics have showed that it doesn't matter how many seminars we have, there is no or little correlation between the growth of a church. Do you believe that? Have you seen that? Okay, so I'm speaking to the choir. This does not mean public evangelism is necessarily ineffective, he says, but it makes no difference to whether churches grow or don't grow. It's not a significant factor. By contrast, he says that the research found that the strongest correlation with church growth was engaging with the community in active service. I'm involved with ADRA, and I'm involved with ADRA for a reason. The reason is because I was in leadership for such a long time, and I didn't see a lot of church growth. And I thought, why? What's happening? And then I started being involved with the community, with the council, with the homeless, with the drug addicts, with other churches, with the salvos, with all different types of groups and communities. And yeah, there has been some growth. But you know who has grown the most from this experience? I have. I'm part of the church. We are the church. And I have grown from the experience. And guess what happens when I grow? Guess who is impacted by that growth? Yeah, my wife, my children, the people I connect with. And then maybe a little bit of that experience I have is absorbed by them, and then they grow. And then maybe they are involved. It has helped me have a heart for people that I didn't have before. And I know I might have shared this with you before, but when I was a young man, I didn't understand the homeless people. For me, they were a nuisance on the streets. I really, get a job, you've got unemployment, what's your problem? And one day I was reading something, it must have been Christ's Object Lessons or something like that. And I was reading how Jesus was treating, the lepers and all this. And it hit me, John, why do I not have the heart for the marginalized, the suffering, those who are going through all these challenges in life? Why do I not have a natural heart for them? My wife had it, but I didn't. It's complicated. I'm a bit of an Aspie, all right? Asperger's. So I'm a little bit on the spectrum. So I see things in logic and structure, and so I struggle with that. But God took me on a 10-year journey to open my heart. And today, I love being with this community. I see brilliance in this community. I see talent. I see giftedness. I see so many wonderful things in these young men and young women. Even though many of them suffer with mental illness, many of them have depression, when you get to know them, there is beauty in these folk. I've changed. And if I've changed, then maybe the people around me will change too. And I think this is one of the strongest benefits for us as a church. It is why we need to do this as a community. People are looking for a place. This is, again, part of his research. He says, people are looking for a place that will enable and encourage meaningful service in the community in a way to live out their faith and hope to espouse. Remember the church I talked about in Tassie? That's what they're experiencing. It's changing them, and it's bringing people to the community that share those values. Then they're learning about the truth. I love this little quote here from Ellen White. She says here, if the truth you profess does not have influence enough on you to convert you to be kind and courteous, then all the truth you believe is of no value. So if our truth is not changing us to be generous, kind, loving, courteous, then what's the point of the truth that we share? So for the first time, what we are seeing is a world that's rejecting Christianity. They are, and there's many good reasons for it. We are anti-women, we are anti-gay, we are anti-this, we are prejudicial. At least that's how they see Christianity. So the pressure on us to be relevant and to change is very high. And we talked about AI and the technology and what's happening. How are we going to adapt to this? How are we going to change? See, our young people, they can go on YouTube, they can go online, and they can listen to the best sermons. Great sermons online from churches and speakers all over the world. They can listen to some of the best music online. Uplifting, Christian music. My wife loves music. She's often brought to a state of worship when she listens to beautiful music. You should hear her sing when she walks around the house. It's beautiful. But there's one thing that young people can't do online, and that is make meaningful, loving, personal connections. And that's what we need as a church community. With all the AI and all the things that are happening, and the COVID, post-COVID, everything else, we need to learn how to love, connect, but not just love and connect, but touch. Oh, sister. We don't touch anymore. When I am at work and I meet someone or I connect with someone and something beautiful happens, I always ask, do you mind if I give you a hug? You have to ask today, all right? But I do. I give them a hug. Not too long, because you... Yeah, I know. And that's one thing I love. You know, when I was a young man, cold hands. Not a touch. Okay. Warm hands. When I was a young man, growing up in my culture, I come from I'm Czech. We weren't touchy-feely. You know, I'd meet my cousins. You know, nice to meet you. Good to see my uncle, auntie. My wife comes into my life, and she's all huggy and touchy and all the rest of it. I had to learn, what is this thing, this hugging thing, you know? So I have to thank my wife for that. So today I'm a lot more personable because of the journey that I've gone through with my wife. I think we need to do that. You know, obviously there are people that have, you know, feel uncomfortable in that area, but that's something we need to do. So, a couple of things. Youth, focus on our youth. Number 2, focus on our communities, because we grow as a result. When I started church, and probably everyone here would agree, that when we came to church through some truth, some Bible study or seminar or revelation seminar or something, and so we believed. Then we learnt the behavior. You know, we gave up smoking or drinking or whatever it was, or we started wearing ties. You know, as a young man, I had a suit and tie. And then after we integrated and learned to behave, then we belonged and we were part of a community. But today, people are looking for a place where those values are shared, and they're looking for a place where they can belong. Then they learn the unique behavior of that community, and then they're learning what you believe. We need to learn to see that people are coming to Christ and coming to our communities in different ways today. You see that, yeah? I think you see that. I don't think I'm speaking to people who aren't aware of this. All right, I'm going to finish up because we've had a lot of chat. It was great. I love that. Let me just read these last few things and then we'll finish up. Jesus messed with the social order. Oh, I love this. He taught and then empowered a small group of uneducated young people. Isn't that beautiful? Just some young kids. He taught them. He educated them. He taught by example, by touching the untouchable, by accepting the rejected, by pulling into his group unlikely characters. He connected with women, with criminals, the Gentiles, or the dogs of the day, the enemies of Israel and the hated Romans. Talk about counter-cultural. Christ's object lessons, page 386. There is no distinction on account of nationality, of race, or caste that is recognized by God. He is the maker of all. All men, women, are of one family by creation, and all are one through redemption. Christ came to demolish every wall of partition, to throw open every compartment of the temple, that every soul might have free access to God. His love is so broad, so deep, so full, that it penetrates everywhere. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. Can we be a church that is so broad, so deep, so wide, that it reaches everywhere, everyone? There is no prejudice. And you know what the best place to start? With ADRA. You've got it here. If you didn't have ADRA, I'd suggest go join some other group. Be involved with the Baptist group or the Catholic group or whatever group that's connecting in the community. But you've got it here. You've got a head start. Empower the young. Give them the keys to the church. Make them feel part of it. And learn to reconnect. That's what we need to do as a church, because the time is coming that we will not be able to. And everyone will be addicted to their headsets. And everyone will be online. But I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, John, back there. I think that there's going to be a reverse. I think people will get tired of that. And I think they'll be looking for a place that will share their values, that there is meaning, where there is some kind of connection, where there is hope and love. and I think they'll want to come to something that they will know. And they'll be attracted to what you have here. They'll be looking for communities that serve communities. And I think this is why there is a value in what we have here and what you have here. So that's my prayer. As the time comes close to Jesus' return, I hope this church is on fire, that it has a value, and that it's serving not just the community, but our journey as well and helping us grow. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time.